Marietjie Bothma was born in, well, apparently in Potchefstroom. She, till today, to date, doesn't know her birth parents. I got adopted at a very young age. I never had the privilege of knowing where I really come from or who I am. I was adopted when I was only a few months old, but unfortunately, due to circumstances, there was a lot of abuse in the sector that I grew up in. I grew up in kind of like a church sector that would actually define how our parents taught us and brought us up. Abuse started at a very young age at the sector that we lived on the farm in KZN. Obviously from Potchefstroom, I got adopted in Pretoria. At the age of 2, we moved down to KwaZulu-Natal to a farm and so-called mission where we had to attend the school on the premises. But I was not lucky enough, you know, we all have the mindset that white South Africans had it all in the apartheid years. Fact is, I actually had to drop out of school in standard 5, which is now grade 7.
Sure. And why was that?
You know, there are many things to that. I never really understood why. Firstly, I probably thought it was because I was adopted and I felt I wasn't wanted by the family that had adopted me. And the sector we grew up in, kind of like, I think they were the main reason. You know, you are being adopted, but you never feel part of anyone. So I was chased out of school halfway through grade 7. Marietjie Bothma never in her life wore a high school uniform till today. I have no education whatsoever, but obviously being on the sector, there was at a certain age, they decided to chase me away from the sector because I was becoming very verbal about the physical, mental, and sexual abuse that was happening on the premises.
And where was that coming from? Was it coming from your family side or people who lived, you know, in your perimeter?
Family, my adoptive family side, especially my father's side, and also the sector itself. The sector itself was very, very. For example, I'm a white woman. You know, I'm not used to Zulu traditions and things, but we would be taken into rooms from the age of 8, and they would literally make us lie down, open our legs, and have old grannies touch us and see if we are virgins or not. You know, I mean, that's a form of abuse. I mean, as a child, you end up thinking it's normal. But it's never been normal to touch a young child in a private part. It's never been normal to physically abuse someone so bad. I remember there were times growing up where I would be told I'm this unwanted child and I'm so troublesome because I was very verbal, and I would get locked up by my adoptive father, sometimes 3, 4, 5 days with only what we call uputu and water as food.
Sure. And
my adoptive mother would come around about 12 o'clock at night when my father was sleeping, and she would actually snuck me out of that room and help me take a shower and stuff, as form of punishment for things I didn't even do. But because I was the child that didn't belong into that family or into that sector, you know, and growing up, there are many incidents I can mention of abuse, and especially in the white community.
I mean, you speak about your adoptive mom and how she would sneak you out to take a shower. I mean, when you spoke to her about some of the issues that you faced, what was her reaction? Did she feel powerless, you know, to stand against your adoptive father and say, don't treat her like that? I mean, we adopted her wanting to adopt her. You can't treat her the way you do.
You know, I don't blame my mother. She had no powers. My father was a so-called pastor on the mission. It's a church, a sector we're talking about. And I remember walking into the room one day, and I found my father actually beating her up. So there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of abuse towards all his children. My father had 7 children. There was verbal, physical, mental, especially the mental abuse. We must remember that most of abuse, we don't realize that because we block it in our lives, starts at verbal as a child. So obviously my mom was powerless, but I do feel that at some point she could have blocked it. And when I talk to her now, you know, she tends to tell me, you know what, they made me do those things. So she had no control over most of the things that she says were done to us.
I mean, then you move up to Johannesburg and you're living in a township, in Orange Farm, where I'm sure you were sticking out like a sore thumb. But also you find yourself living on the streets.
Yes.
And, I mean, what was that experience like?
You know, being a young white girl in the streets of Hillbrow was the worst experience ever.
Okay.
You know, many times in life you say you've dealt with things, but you never really deal with mental and physical abuse. It was in August 2002 when I used to sing on the streets, and with the money I would go and pay the security at the hotel just to bath. I never sold my body, but I would be called names because of this little white girl sitting on the street. And I don't remember once in 2 years being a street child being asked by any of my own community, how did you get here? Who are you? Don't you have a home? That's the sad part about my own community, the white community. It was in August 2002 when I got raped by 8 men on the streets. I landed up in hospital. My friend that stayed, another girl I met on the streets, a white girl, she had run away from home because her father had raped her. And they murdered her, and I survived. We were stabbed, we were raped. But I was told I'll never have kids. Today I've got 2 beautiful children. But I survived it. And as much as I'm talking about it now, there's a part of me that died. There's a part of me that questioned, is this what life should be like? Because rape for me had become a norm. Rape for me had become, as a woman, number one, as a white South African girl living in the streets with nowhere to go, no home to go to. It was the worst part of my life. But a black pastor, Pastor Mboto from Palm Springs, Orange Farm, actually took me off the streets. They saved me. They said, come live with us. You sing. We always see you singing. Why don't you come teach our choir to sing in church? And that's how I got off the streets. My own community couldn't help me.
Sure.
But the Orange Farm community reached out.
Of course, I know that you're now using this terrible experience that you've been through to assist other women.
Yes.
Speak to us about the campaigns that you're working on.
Well, currently, I've decided to start a new campaign where I want to talk about the silence of the white woman when it comes to rape and abuse. I feel in South Africa, we're very verbal as black South Africans. I believe I'm black. Sorry, just white outside. All of those things. But the white community is shut down. We are quiet because we're scared of our own people, and that's fact. If I go to my, let's say I'm married, and I go to my in-laws or to my family and say, look, I'm being abused, they don't believe me, or they tell me, you put yourself in that situation, so deal with it. So we're starting a campaign where we are encouraging other young women to say, it's time we start talking. I had a 66-year-old woman, after hearing my story, call me and say, for the first time in 44 years, I can actually talk and say, my uncle raped me. And it's just because you gave me the strength to do that. Oh. But I also run a campaign where I teach women how we are not the victims. Because the victims are your Alice Kupuzas, your Leratos, all those girls that are 6 foot underground. Those are the victims, because they are not alive anymore. Those are the victims. You are not the victim, because you keep victimizing yourself if you see yourself as a victim. And I teach these women and men, actually, to your surprise, it's not just women, but men as well, to say, once you get the mindset that I'm not the victim anymore, you're the survivor, then we also help you to how do you live with the pains? How do you learn to be the overcomer? And then obviously to be the conqueror of your life with your past. I mean, I have no education. I'm 36, I still can't drive. I still don't own property. I still hustle. But at the end of the day, without that education, with no education, I was able to make something out of my life. So with all my campaigns that I'm doing, I also work a lot with the boy child, because I feel if we can groom the boy child, we will be able to groom them to be better men.
Sure.
There will be less rape cases. We are living in a fatherless nation where boys have to be men at young ages. So I've got campaigns that focus on the women. I've got campaigns that focus on the boy child.
I want to get into one of the campaigns you initially had spoken about, the issue of the secrecy when it comes to white people and abuse. You know, I want to try and understand that. In your view, why is that the case? Why, in your view, are white people afraid to speak out about rape and abuse that's happening within their homes?
I'm going to be honest with you. My own white community turned their back on me because I became vocal, because I started talking about what was really going on within the home and outside of the home. I feel that in our white society, we're afraid because once you become vocal, you lose substance, number one. You lose, we're all looking for a place to belong. And when you find yourself in a place where you're comfortable, you know, once you become verbal, you may lose the house. You may lose. I even lost my children into foster care and to adoption because I didn't have stability, because I spoke out. Because I walked away from my abusive relationship. I was told, because financially with your job you don't get a monthly income, because everything was taken away from me. And as a woman, I couldn't sustain my own lifestyle or my kids. And I ended up, to be honest with you, I was told straight in my face that, look here, the truth is there are other people there who would do anything for a child. You are homeless, you're in a shelter, you can't do anything for your child, so you don't have a choice but to give your child up.
Sure. Those are stark realities many women are facing in this country.